Welcome to our Twitter Talk, our end of the month fun jammy jam sesh, where we talk all things marketing. And today we're going to be talking Twitter. So in about 3.5 minutes, we'll get started. But first, we'll go a little back and forth on our favorite things on Twitter. I'll go first, and then David will go. I really enjoy how real-time and up-to-date sports content is on Twitter. I follow Pat McAfee, who's a radio host, and follow Patrick Mahomes, quite literally, Aaron Rodgers. Like, it's really interesting. You can get that direct kind of line of connection. So I'm finding a really intriguing first line in sports.
So the actual announcers and the sports personalities that you like. We were talking about earlier about how there's little segments of Twitter. Like there's SEO and marketing Twitter.
Right.
I follow that sometimes. So I'm in there. I'm in that little ecosystem of like everybody, hey, SEO Twitter. And I see all the responses. I realize all the people are responding. I'm already following. So you're kind of in that community or whatever. You're in the NFT community, right?
I sure am.
So NFT
Twitter or crypto Twitter, it's commonly called. That's probably a strange hobby that I've fallen into over the past 6 months.
Yeah. So I'll mention a weird kind of Twitter following that I'll have is for some reason, I feel like if I had a second life, I would maybe have like gone to school and did like weather. Weather's kind of been cool.
Nice.
So usually there's like a random hurricane coming or something. And like, I don't really want to watch the news. So I'll follow weather Twitter, and there's people, that talk about their thoughts on what's happening with storms and stuff. And it's interesting. It's prediction, but it's just cool. So it's like weather Twitter is its own thing.
And honestly, I didn't even know.
But they put WX Twitter, and I'm like, oh,
what's the X?
I don't know. Weather
Extreme weather.
I don't know. I didn't know what that was. I was like, what's this WX thing? And then like it came to be.
Well, and we'll touch on this in a few minutes. You'll hear David. Yes. And you know what? That's funny that you brought that up as a kind of a final thing we can chat on before we get started with just some kind of like talking points and some questions that we've had come in about Twitter already. We had some people message us before we even started with some of these questions, but if you have any questions, you can obviously put it in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll answer anything for you, anything at all regarding to Twitter or social media or really anything. But it's interesting. There's a vocabulary to Twitter that is unique to that space. It doesn't even fully go to Instagram all the time. I mean, some of it does. There's a shorthand to it.
Yeah, that's not sure as it used to be, but yeah.
Right. There's a lot of GIFs that are used on Twitter that you see that on Facebook as well. But I find that Twitter was earlier to the GIF game than Facebook, where it's like the reactions and everything is really interesting.
Those are the responses. There's no text.
No text.
Where I kind of feel like Facebook, there's usually text.
There is.
When people just go straight GIF.
Yeah. So let's get started. We're going to talk about all things Twitter. Really, as an entry point to it, I think we want to give our position on the platform, right? To us, and again, this comes from a literal marketing agency perspective. Twitter's about communities. Twitter is a real-time conversation that's actually happening through a social media platform, different from the well-known ones like Facebook and Instagram, which, yes, of course, they allow comments, they allow interaction, but they're not real time. In fact, they've fought to get there, right? They all are offering live stuff, whereas Twitter from the beginning was a live interaction, right?
Yeah, when you refresh your page, and a lot of times you'll get things from 14 seconds ago, from a minute ago. So it's very, very today.
Very relevant, very right now. To David's point, you can get something literally seconds after it posts, which is a really interesting thing for, again, on a personal level. If you're just interested in something or a hobby, that's awesome. But from a business perspective, if you're following a few key people that could be relevant for your business, they may literally say something that creates an action point for you. They may say something I'll give our own. I may notice that someone, this did happen, this is actually real, was asking for video help, but it was literally seconds ago. And I was one of the first ones to respond. We got that client. we acquired that business and actually converted that just because I was fast to responding to what was going on, which is a really interesting thing that Twitter gives you.
Yeah. And also on a business side of things, again, the B2B side is that you can also listen for people with opinions about your business or about similar things. Maybe they're having difficulties with their competitor. Maybe they're not answering their phone, or there's delays or bad customer service. You can kind of poke at them and say, hey, I'm available. I can help. I can, whatever it might be. So it can, that immediacy is there.
Which is amazing in the social space, because another way to look at Twitter, I know our theme is that it is a community driven kind of thing, but it's also the new form of customer service. I'll give another example. It's very real to me. I was having issues with my T-Mobile, right? We all know T-Mobile is a fun network to have as your mobile provider. And I tweeted at the CEO, and within seconds, he did not respond, but T-Mobile support sure did. So it was a really interesting dynamic. I also did that with Chase Bank, where I had something nice to say about our business banker. Chase support reached out directly. You're seeing some companies and the really savvy ones on the forefront using it as, of course, you can go to their website and fill out a form. Maybe someone will get back to you in 72 hours, but this is very real time. And let's talk a little bit, and I think you could speak to this really well. Why is Twitter still relevant, right? It's been around. This is not a new thing, but is starting to verge on a resurgence, if you will, even a new kind of pop for it.
Yeah, I mean, it probably has to do with the fact that it does still have that immediacy. It still allows you to connect with people. There isn't, organic in some of the other, except for as we talked about with the TikTok, but some of the other ones has really kind of gone away. But the community side of it, there's these literal communities, whether it's regional, whether it's through what you're, a hobby of yours or your business. There's other like-minded people that are already kind of have made like good use of the space, and you can kind of join in there. So it's very active. It's probably one of those social networks that the people that are in it are active. So that's why it's relevant, because the people that are using it a lot.
Right. And if you're into a certain segment or your business leans a certain way, for example, David brought up, I did get into NFTs and cryptocurrency. I can follow lists, follow topics that really follow along that. And David will kind of go further into that, but it opens up where they're going as a company and how they've gotten more and more relevant again. You're seeing a lot of different ages use it. Whereas again, Facebook did kind of accidentally pigeonhole themselves into a certain demographic. Twitter's opened that up, and where we're not going to dive deep into what Clubhouse is, but Twitter put out a product called Twitter Spaces, which works right off your main Twitter, which is live audio, literally like a live podcast that you can go in on. And if they know who you are, you can literally raise your hand, and they may let you speak. And I've done that in a few cases and actually was able to ask a question with people. It's a very interesting thing that, again, put yourself in maybe you like podcasts, maybe you're into financial stuff, maybe you're into art, maybe you're into, it doesn't matter. There are people hosting these live audio. You could listen to it and actually be a part of that.
Yeah.
How else would you be able to be that close to? I was on a Twitter Spaces with CEOs of companies and NBA players, right? Now, I didn't speak in that one, but I'm just giving an example of how interesting it is. This is very new. Twitter Spaces is new, but it's something they've gone very aggressive about. They got rid of their old, what they were calling fleets, which was a way to kind of combat Instagram. And they went hard on this. Well, maybe people will listen instead of watch.
Yeah. Again, it is a Clubhouse-like experience, but what it again does is it allows you to connect possibly with these people. And maybe you can raise your hand and they won't answer that, but you can tweet at them. There's other ways that you might be able to communicate with them in other ways. You were talking about you quickly kind of touched on it. I want to just kind of go back to it, which is the topics and list in Twitter, right? So similar to how, like, when you go into Facebook and it tells you, do you know these people? Do you like these people? Are these people somebody that you want to know more about?
Are these strangers?
Are these strangers or not? It's kind of creepy a lot of times. Is that Twitter will give you topics that it thinks that might be relevant to you. And topics actually there's probably some AI or some understanding that they see tweets that are getting traction or ones from people with a lot of followers. And so they'll tag those as topics. Maybe it's something that's about football. Maybe it's something that's about cryptocurrency. Maybe it's something about weather, whatever it is. They might be topics, could be trending topics, but they also just might be like viral tweets that they just want you to know. And you have an option to seeing those. So those are just kind of cool because those will just show up. So you don't have to necessarily follow any of these people. But I'm like, oh, that's funny tweet. I like this person. Boom, follow the person. So like they're kind of giving you a little bit extra visibility on some of these tweets that you have if they have what they view as visibility beyond your usual following. So they do that. And then Twitter also has something that's really kind of cool. And some people, so, you always go to somebody and they're like, oh, I'm a really big Twitter user. And then you go to them and they only have like 4 people that they follow. And you're like, well, how do they know what's going on? So probably what they're doing, and this isn't necessarily the only reason why you would do that, is Twitter lists. So what Twitter lists are is a chance for you to pretty much create your own list. You can private do it, or you could even share it with people. So people could actually share your list. I actually follow lists that I don't even curate that other people do, and they pick people that I like or pick topics that I'm interested in following. So I don't have to necessarily follow all these people myself. I can just follow the list. Once you follow the list, then you can just see all the tweets from those people. So it's just cool because you can get segments. So if, let's say, you're tired about hearing about weather, instead of me having to follow 20 weather people, I could just follow the list.
Right. You can use the list to be a whole new way to open a door to different content, curated content, which is so interesting because you really don't have a great way to do that on Facebook. You don't have a great way other than using the search function in Instagram. Twitter is very unique in this way that you can really kind of customize your own experience.
And they'll segment topics, they'll segment that information, and it can, that's, again, that information. What about the relevancy and what shows up and how it shows up? Do you want to kind of chat about that?
Of how it shows up? Yeah, because that leads into our really where we want to talk about how to use it, right?
Yeah.
So what you're saying, like what makes it show up, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's kind of like 4 ways that you would be able to use Twitter, right? You would tweet, that's yourself putting out a piece of content on your profile. You have a reply where you were on someone else's tweet and then you're replying. You could think of that as kind of like a comment in some of the other ecosystems. They call it a reply. There's a retweet, which is you saw something and it was so cool to you that you want to make sure it's on your profile, but you don't want to say anything about it. And then there's a quote tweet, which is where you love that thing, but you definitely have something you want to say about it above that, right? So these 4 things add up to the main interactions. And then there's the like, which has been a thing across all social media. Some platforms have taken it away.
Will they put a thumbs down?
Yeah, will they ever do that? And the like is really more of an algorithm driver, to answer your long-winded answer to your question, is how do you get what you get? And to the point of why you might want lists, why you really might want to put lists up, is right now, if you just like and engage, which is the way we recommend it, it isn't just about posting. It's really about getting on other people's profiles and engaging. If I want to make sure I'm connecting with you, I need to go to your profile. I need to get on the Clarity profile and really engage there. Not just liking. I need to reply. I need to maybe even do retweets, show you that I'm active because you get notified of that. And that's interesting, right? That everything you do, somebody's going to get notified about.
They get visibility in what's going on.
They get pinged. That's something of their. Moreover, the Twitter algorithm starts collecting, okay, you liked this person's stuff, you replied here, you quote tweeted this. They're actually going to start serving that type of content to you in your main feed. So if you're not one of the people that likes to, again, curate your own list or search, basically your activity is going to serve you through the algorithm. I think that was my long-winded way.
No, it's awesome.
That's what you wanted. How do we get there? So let's talk as one of the last kind of 2 things before we answer a few questions. And again, if you have any questions, you can type them right in the chat or right in the Q&A. We again had a few that got sent to us before the event because we always email this out. And again, if you have any feedback on that, you let us know. We're doing these at the end of every month, just trying to add value into stuff you might be doing on your own or things you might have further questions on. So following and unfollowing, right? What the heck does that mean? So in Twitter, you have your profile and you follow other people. So I was talking about Pat McAfee, a sports guy, or Aaron Rodgers. I follow them. That means I'm basically telling Twitter, give me that content in my feed. When people follow you, they're saying the same. And now usually that connection between the two opens up the ability to do one other thing, which is direct messaging. And some people leave their direct messages open, but not really the coolest folks don't. Let's be honest. The coolest folks would have to follow you back to ever receive a direct message from you. And that direct message is very interesting. It's on Twitter, I found the least spam in Twitter DMs, whereas Facebook, super high spam, LinkedIn, unfortunately, super high spam. Whereas Twitter, because they have that follow, unfollow, very interesting thing, it opens that up. And one thing for you to think about in the following and unfollowing is if you're noticing in your feed content that you don't dig it, you don't vibe with it, unfollow those people, unfollow those accounts, because maybe it's not just one person, maybe it's a business, maybe it's Wendy's, Taco Bell, and you're like, you know what, I've had enough of fourth meal or whatever they're done with tacos. Yeah, I'm done with it. Unfollow. You again, there's nothing wrong with unfollowing. It's because you're curating your own experience, which is again a really tough thing that Facebook won't let you do, that Twitter will let you do. Right. Curate that experience. So as a final thing before we kind of pivot into some of the questions, and again, anything you might have, a little bit of strategy from a business perspective. I know we've been talking kind of 10,000 foot view here of like what it can do, why you might kind of want to care. Real-time conversations have value, but as a business, like, what do I do? Where do I go? And a really great starting point for any business is not as much on them tweeting and them posting as it is interacting and engaging. And that means liking, replying, and retweeting and quote tweeting other content, because you're getting involved in a conversation. And that is how you can eventually put your 3 cents in there, if you will.
Would you compare it differently to like kind of how like people on Instagram are more just putting stuff out there? That works to a small part of what Twitter's about, right? It's you're saying it's more about the conversation.
Well, and
it's more about the interaction.
Right. And the thing is, the reason I say that as a starting point, I want to be clear, as a starting point, engagement's a better start, because most people ask us, what do I tweet?
Right.
What do I tweet? Very common question. Like, I hear you guys. Fine. I'll do a Twitter. What do I tweet? Our first step for a business isn't going to be worried about what you're tweeting. Some of it, ironically, is going to organically come from the conversations you get in. You're going to have a thought. That's your tweet. That is your tweet. And a tweet can be literally one word. It can be 280 characters, the full. It could be an image. It could be a link. It can be as simple as like, I had a great blog post on my website. I'd love to share that. Myself, I had a YouTube video I worked on. I went ahead and shared that. But what comes more organically for us and the strategies we put forth is as you're engaging in those kind of mini ecosystems of like the weather people, or again, if you're doing it from a business perspective, let's say I sell something, let's say I sell a product and I'm connecting with other e-commerce folks, other marketing folks, or even maybe I've really found where some of my customers hang out. And that's what's really interesting, their topics and their lists.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I can say that in the SEO Twitter space, a lot of the tools that we use are very involved in that space. That's and they're very supportive of the community and helpful, and they're not only are they listening, but they're adding to the conversations. So yeah, those tools that we are the customers of are on that space.
And I think that's a really great example even to give too from the business perspective as we kind of wrap up today. So again, tools we use, I'll throw one out like Hrefs or Moz. They're very active on Twitter, again, because they know their market. They're understanding their market, and it's worth that. So they may give tips and tricks on how to use their platform literally as a tweet, right? And then we may ask a question in there and start engaging, and then other people see that. It's a very public kind of thing, which is good here to lead that way and put yourself in that position.
Well, I see a lot of times somebody will say, oh my gosh, I really need a really good standing desk. And then all of a sudden 25 people answer, but then you also see 30 responses to like, oh, this was a great one. Oh, I had this one already broke. So you get almost like a pre-vetted thing, and you just go, oh, well, this one has 95 likes. That's just got to be a good desk because everybody's liking it. Now, it might not be true or not, but you get more of the community interaction.
For sure.
One other thing too, you mentioned about the business side of it. Now, there's a business, but there also might be the people within the business. So like maybe like Hrefs or like Moz, or two companies that we use, like their CEOs sometimes will also tweet separately from the business. And they have their own accounts.
Even Twitter does
also jump in and participate. It's just so interesting because sometimes there's 3 or 4 people that are part of an organization that are tweeting on their personal one.
You nailed it.
All about even the company.
No, you nailed it. And that creates that fluid conversation that if you kind of just think Twitter equals community conversation. Twitter themselves, that's how they do it. The CEO has his own account. Twitter has its own account, and literally like a bunch of their VPs, and you will see them literally on new functionality. They literally crowdsource their own systems and say, hey, oh, you don't like that. And then you have 4,000 people saying terrible feature, get rid of it kind of thing. So that's kind of, again, a broad overview. If you have deeper questions or you really want to go kind of down a rabbit hole, email us. We'll jump on a meeting with you and really talk deeper about Twitter. But real quick, we want to answer some of the questions that, again, we got coming through. So David, one thing, can you edit a tweet? Can you edit? That's such a weird thing to even say because people are so used to that.
How did you start you
I should have said it.
Segued into this conversation by saying like thousands of people, you cannot edit a tweet, and it angers Twitter. Twitter is so angry because Twitter will announce a new thing and then everybody asks, well, can I edit a tweet? Because they just wonder, why have they not added that functionality?
Why can't they make this happen?
So the problem is if you tweet something and you misspell something, usually
it's forever.
You just put a reply that just says, I know I spelled don't wrong or something like that. Everybody laughs. But it's very normal that you either just let it go if it obviously is a blatant thing that you just shouldn't leave up anymore. You delete it. And that's pretty much it. You can't edit, you can't change it. So
no, and unfortunately it's something that is irritating. They know about it. Apparently it's difficult because the way their stuff just hits the cloud or whatever it is, there must be a problem there or else they would have done it. But you cannot edit a tweet. You can delete, and that's about it. I keep hearing that it's coming, but that's been saying for years.
Oh, it's been years. They doubled the number of characters before they do that.
So what about, again, a lot of our people in our community might ask, should I buy followers? And again, we've heard that a lot directly. Where do you stand on the purchasing of followers?
Stay away. Chances are what you're following are probably bots anyway. And like we were talking about the community side or on the local side or the interaction side, those bots aren't going to get you the visibility when you know it. And sometimes it's less about how many people are following you and more about who you're conversing with.
That's right.
So having 1,000 bots following you or whatever, like if there was probably a place where it probably would be most least productive, it's probably in Twitter to have a bunch of like spammy bots.
Yeah.
There's plenty of quality people putting out things that might only have a few hundred or a few thousand followers.
Absolutely.
So like it's less numbers effective than maybe some of the other ones.
To your point, you can get a lot out of an interaction with someone that might only have 150 followers, but is the person you're trying to get to. Because it might be, for example, maybe you're B2B and you want to connect with a business owner who is just using it to curate content for themselves. And now you have an organic experience with them and you can have a real conversation, which is a lot harder elsewhere. So we had a question come in, do I need to use hashtags? And it's a multi-part answer. I'll go first, and if you have anything else to add, not necessarily. You don't have to. It's not a hard and fast. But if you want to get caught up in some other conversations, you would want to consider it. And then it goes down a rabbit hole of what hashtags do I use, which is why I started with you don't have to. You do not have to. But if you go to their search function, which looks like the little magnifying glass, you will actually see the trending hashtags and trending topics. If you were looking to get involved with some of those conversations, those tags, I'll give an example for myself. I watch Monday Night Football. I maybe want someone to maybe catch my quip about the Manning cast on Monday Night Football. I would want to make sure to hashtag Monday Night Football or the matchup, whether it was, I forget what it was, but
MNF.
Yeah, MNF.
Or GB versus
SF.
Or
there's always a hashtag for these games that gets organically generated by not necessarily the NFL, the users.
Right, there's enough people doing it.
So if you want to get caught up in that conversation, I would say then worry there. But if you're just, again, about that engagement, really getting your feet wet, don't overthink the hashtag.
No. Twitter ads.
Yeah.
There's an advertising platform.
There sure is.
Tell us more about it.
Hey, it's early. Okay. It's been around a while. Okay. It is not the strongest out there. Will they take your money? Of course they will. Will they promoted tweets? You'll see it. It is not as good as a few other ecosystems. We're pretty particular. We love what Google can do for ads and how it can get in front of people. We like some of what the other social media platforms are doing. we're seeing a big shift. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, how they're really trying to make sure you make content that actually doesn't look like an ad, that is an ad. Twitter was the latest to that. Are they working on e-commerce integrations and all this stuff? 100%. But right now, it would be very specific. You would want to get your community of where you're messing around and the lists and topics that are for you before you maybe put some of your marketing dollars there. It's again, a little hyper kind of focused, whereas you could put better bang for your buck elsewhere at the moment.
I think you're saying it's more on more of a branding than it is about probably an interaction, like by showing up there in the space where you're already trying to either get known or trying to get some visibility on. That's where it would probably make
absolutely sense. And again, if you're even considering overall a social media ad budget, shoot us an email. We could definitely jump on a Zoom, or you can come to the office and talk. Even if it's not that we're going to touch it, we would just be able to offer you such insight. You know, we work for, what is it now, almost 4 dozen businesses in different capacities. And again, we've touched on these things with a lot of different industries. So at the very least, we'd be able to give you some information that would serve you on your journey to make sure you can maximize. But when it comes down to it, if you don't have a Twitter yet, it's free, right? It's free to mess around. You could always delete it. If it doesn't work for you, give it a try. I think you'd be shocked at what you can do for your business by connecting with new people in that organic of a real-time way. Twitter equals community and conversation. And if those things at all connect with what your business and what your bottom line deliverable is, you should consider it. Anything else to kind of add?
No.
That is our Twitter talk. End of the month, each and every month, we're going to have a new topic. I already forgot what next month is. Did you remember it? See, you better watch your emails because I forgot too. And I can't open another program or this whole computer will shut itself down. So look for those emails. Again, any feedback you have on these or any topics you'd love us to talk about. We go through social media. We talk about SEO. Next month's topic is something more related to SEO. I know that. Yeah. We will get you those emails and we can't wait to connect with you again. Have a good one.